It is a full meal. Yep. You have to bring, you know, like one, the year I did it before, and I know Deb has done this every year too, but like one group brought a whole gluten-free meal. So for somebody who needed to be gluten-free, that was what their meal was. Somebody else brought a whole vegetarian meal. You know, so you kind of in your group, you talk. It doesn't have to be that. You can bring a whole paleo meal, you know, so kind of something, but you have to justify what's in it. So, yeah. You don't have to. Yep, you can create any meal. We'll just make sure, you know, that they're properly labeled and everything. Yep. Okay, so let's get rolling. Okay, did every group pick a date? Oh, yay. Awesome, thank you. So on some of these other days, I'll bring in some goodies. And then don't forget, on the attendance sheet, if you are interested in extra credit via doing the devotional at the beginning of class, you can sign up for that. So that is an option. And just write in the attendance sheet the day that you decide to do that. And maybe it won't be until after the first exam that I get a bunch of you signing up, and that's fine. We can do that. And then also, I sent out an announcement last night. I did that because I forget, and I'm glad I did because I saw it this morning, or else I would have forgotten again. Powered by Plants, which is kind of co-led by Mitch, our PT, and it meets. I met with them last time just to kind of get a feel for what it was like. Over in the PT clinic, kind of in the nursing area, and once a month they meet to kind of talk about, to support kind of the vegetarian lifestyle. I realized, I guess how the titles, the labels aren't really important, but I've been using it a little bit wrong. I think it's what it used to be. Vegan used to be more of that moral, ethical type. You know, that there was, it was the cruelty to animals that caused them to go vegetarian. But I have now been informed that it's very strict vegetarian. And so quite a few of them are, where they don't eat animal products of any kind. Anyway, it is really interesting. You guys know I do eat animal products. They were very welcoming to me. They did not shun me. I just kind of went and said I need to learn methods of cooking more protein vegetarian so that I can do that more, because I do know that that's important. And so anyway, they meet once a month over there. This month is, so a week from today, at 6:30, they will be meeting, and they will have a guest speaker who is a dietitian nutritionist. Now, the interesting thing about this, I usually get in arguments with dietitians because they follow the, you know, the ADA, and sometimes they don't take into account processed foods. And that's kind of all I do, is take into account processed foods. But from what I hear, she brings the best from both worlds. So I will not break into song on that one. But anyway, so she will be speaking next Wednesday night at 6:30. Okay. Off the top of your head, he does want a head count to wonder if we need to change places. How many of you think you would be able to make that and are choosing to do so? Okay, really. So I see a half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'll tell them maybe a dozen, and then the rest of you can kind of think about it a little bit. But you will get extra credit for this class, and I do think it is valuable to hear the information. So, you know, so just know that. Okay, let me think if there's any other business. So I do want to reiterate about the snack and the meals, just kind of to re-talk about that a little bit. The date you signed up for, your group then obviously is going to be the only group bringing a snack for the entire class. There are 31 students in here, okay, so take that into account. You will be getting money for that. I need to turn that in. I will get cash. I will hand your group cash for you to spend on the snack and the meal, okay? It is your job to then use that money wisely. The receipts have to come back into me, okay? They have to come back into me. Don't make me try to go beg that I really, really did spend this how I'm supposed to. And the change. You don't get to keep the change. So you can spend it all if you want, or just bring it and turn it back in. You do end up getting the change back because it was your guys' lab money, but what I do, I collect it all, and then I'll redistribute it back to you guys if there's any left. All right. So, but you will get money to do that. You will have to budget. You need to come up with a menu. As we get going, you have a little bit of time to be thinking about that, and as we're learning more, you will have to run it through a diet analysis to make sure that it's a healthy meal. You can use a theme. If you want to do a gluten-free meal, you are more than welcome to do a gluten-free meal. And then when you run it through the system, to kind of check it, we'll just know that it's gluten-free, so some of the things may not, come out quite right. If you want to do a dairy-free meal, same thing, okay? If you're like, I want to do a paleo meal, absolutely. We just need to understand that when we run it through the diet analysis of why that looks the way it does. What I would like you to do, when you know the meal that you're doing, I'll just keep bringing these sign-up sheets. Sometimes you won't put anything on there, but if you happen to know the type of meal you're doing and maybe the main dish, go ahead and put it down so that we don't get 10 chicken dinners with rice, okay? So we do want a variety. We will all be eating community supper together here. We will invite the rest of the faculty of this department, and we will invite President Ellis and his wife. And they have come and have had a blast. So, so just know that's kind of it's a pretty big deal, And we'll gather here. Everybody needs to be there. So put it on your calendar now. Mark it with a T. Put it in the oven. Anyway, would you jump up and can you hit that? I'd appreciate it. Thank you. I usually climb on the chair before you guys all get here. Okay, so I have where we need to get to today in order to then be able to wrap up the carbohydrate chapter on Friday. So I guess we do need to speed up just a little bit. We ended at the recommendations for added sugars. This kind of goes along with your article talking about sugars that you need to read and then put your comments on the discussion board. So don't forget about doing that, okay? So remember the article. That will also help you with this part of the chapter. Looking in the new book, I'm not sure how your edition approaches this, but the book that I had did not go into quite as much information as I was hoping on this. I'm hoping that it will show up later, and I think it does. But added sugars are probably, in my eyes, the thing you most need to pay attention to. Okay, and take a peek at that. So. Excuse me. So recommended, actually in your book, at least in my book, they start out by saying that it started out as less than 25% of total calories should be added sugars. And then, now as we're moving along, health professionals say less than 10% of total calories. And so if you are looking at a 2,000 calorie diet in a day or so, I'm trying to think I think something I wrote down in my math isn't quite right. But for women, it should be about 25 grams a day, no more than that, and for men, 38 grams. Oh, that's based on the next one, the 100 calories of sugar a day, men 150, that gets us to that 25 grams per day. If you do less than 10% of total calories on a 2,000 calorie diet, then you're looking at, what does that end up being? Boy, okay, 2,000, 10% is 20, right? So 20 calories, that is actually 5 grams a day. Am I right there? That's not very much. Does anybody see what I might be missing?
It's 200 calories.
20, that's 1%. Thank you. All right, 200 calories. So then you divide that and you get to 50 grams. Okay, thank you. So less than 50 grams. So then the American Heart Association is what then brought in the women 100 calories. And that's where we get to the 25 grams and the 38 grams. Okay, so here's just some images that look at the amount of sugar. If you guys remember when they did a ban in New York City on, that it has to be a 16 ounce or less of soda, I did not do any research. Do you guys know, is that still in effect or did that ever pass? I don't know if it did, but it would have only been in places that the city had a say in. And so it would be in your restaurants, but like a gas station could still sell it bigger. So there were kind of some glitches, but the good thing about it was it actually got people talking about the size of their drinks. Because if you figure you go get a big gulp, right? That's about 4 8-ounce bottles or cans of pop in a day if you drink the whole thing. But people are so, I think, like money conscious and what is the good deal? So when you go across the street to McDonald's, you're like, well, man, it's only 10 more cents to get double the amount of soda, so I might as well buy the bigger one. No, because you don't need it. So save your dimes at the end of the year. You might be able to go have a party or something. I don't know. It adds up. But even bottled iced tea, you wouldn't expect it to be here, right? But and these may be about a teaspoon. I'm trying to figure out. They are more than a gram in those cubes. So I was trying to figure out what exactly those equaled. But that's a lot of sugar in bottled tea. Okay, it is just as easy to make it yourself with a tea bag. Okay, maybe not just as easy, but it is pretty simple to do if you plan ahead, and then you don't have all that sugar. Okay, Red Bull, not quite as much sugar as the iced tea, but a lot of other junky things that you don't need in your body too. But still, you're still, if you look at how many grams in a day you're supposed to get, and then how much sugar is in each of these drinks. One of the things that I tell people first and foremost, if they are trying to lose weight or just trying to get healthy, is, are you drinking your sugar? Okay? There's so much sugar that you should have in a day. How much of it are you drinking? All right, that's the first place to stop. If nothing else, I tell, pick one thing, and if that person is still drinking pop, that is the one thing I start them with. Get off of pop. All right? There is nothing in here that you need for life. Okay? It's a fun drink. Now, once in a while, if you're going to have it, consider it a dessert. So on the weekend, if you're thinking, oh, I might want a Coke, or I can have a dessert, make that choice and go from there. When you work with people, and we talked about this, so I won't linger there, you will have to break them of the habit. You'll have to break that addiction, okay? Because it is strong, especially when you start talking about diet pop. That's another issue in and of itself too. Yeah.
Don't you think that pop is worse than, let's say, something like cake because of all the chemicals it has in it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I buy in far. Pop is right at the very top of my list as something you need to get out of your life. Okay, it's at that very top. I would have to say there's probably nothing else that would go above it. Cigarette smoking is probably above it, but that you take in. I was going to say that you inhale. Yeah, that you are taking in and eating or consuming as a treat. Pop would be right at the very top. Right under cigarette smoking comes pop. Okay. I would even say if there is not a genetic disposition to alcohol in your family, I'm going on recording here, so I'm not going to say to drink alcohol. I do not. So I'll just up with that. I do not drink alcohol because it is in my family. Alcoholism back a couple generations. So I stay away. But, I understand, and there are health benefits to wine and in a, casual, not an everyday thing. Is it still enough of a health benefit that it should be a part of your lifestyle? Not necessarily. So I still would say, stay away from alcohol, but I actually put pop above it in the, you really do not need this in your life. Okay. So anyway, yeah. So any of you who are still drinking pop, I know you're not going to tell me who you are. I do not judge you. Actually, I do. I have had these poor coaches. I'm like, oh, you guys, don't do this. And I've had some that listen and nod, and not to say that the ones who are here right now, this was a few years back. I remember a coach every day, a 2-liter Diet Mountain Dew. Not to say that he consumed it all in one day, but that was what and I'm like, oh. So, and so now we just talked about added sugars, artificial sweeteners. I even actually put above added sugars as you need to totally stay away from. So I guess it would go diet pop, then pop in my little sequence. So, and I read your discussion board. So yes, I am completely there. So glycemic index and glycemic load. Why are these important and what is the difference? There is a website, your book gives this too, that you can go to and kind of get a whole smattering of what that is. Or if you look at page, it's table 4.4. This gives the glycemic index and glycemic loads of common foods. The thought process behind it, let me go ahead and get here. The thought process behind this is about the absorption into the system. And what it's saying is the slower the absorption into the system, the less of a spike of your blood glucose, and then a less of a drop. And so kind of maintaining that homeostasis of your blood glucose is important. And so the glycemic index is just really looking at the effect of consuming 50 grams of a specific carbohydrate. What does that do to the blood glucose? Okay? And so it is in this list, if you look under glycemic index, and they do it on a 100-point scale. So if with that you have 50 grams of glucose sitting at 100, all right, and so that would be the most of an effect that you can have on the blood glucose. And so here is the rating. 70 or more is a high glycemic index food. In other words, if you are going to consume that food, you need to consume that food with other foods that slow down the digestion. And so if you consume it with a protein, that helps, or with a fat, that is going to help slow down that absorption. But this just gives you an idea of what some of them do. And also as you're trying to decide, when I'm looking at rice, you know, of what to get, you can look at the glycemic index, and that will help you at least in that area, okay? The white rice has a higher glycemic index than does the brown rice, okay? Or looking at the type of grain, the white long grain is very close to the brown rice, and so that's an option if you don't, you know, enjoy that. So it just kind of can help you, you know, pick and choose a little bit better, maybe what to do. And it just goes through and looks at it just straight up. Here are 50 grams of a specific carbohydrate. What does that look like on the blood glucose? Now, if we looked at it more as a glycemic load, what they have done here is taken the glycemic index and then what is the general portion size? Okay, so now they're taking into account portion size that you would generally eat or that the daily value is. Divide that by 100 and then this gives you the glycemic load. Okay, and so that is given in this list as well. And so you can kind of see, you know, what the correlations are. And there is a correlation to an effect. But some people, this is exactly what they use to determine what they eat. Some people use it as a part of the deal. What do you guys think about it? Do you see the benefits as you're starting to, you know, learn more about carbohydrates? Where do you think this tool should fall? I know it's early. I kind of look at it as an extra tool in the toolbox to be able to look at if I am picking a pasta. Maybe it will help me determine which pasta I should go for, you know. If it's going to have a less of an effect on my blood sugar and they're both there, then I can know what to do. Also can help you as you're putting foods together. Okay? As you're creating your meals, take a look at it. You know, okay, if you are going to do this chicken and rice dish, now nobody's going to do chicken and rice dish, right? You're going to do this chicken and rice dish, maybe you're going to look at this and go, you know what? If we did white long grain rice instead of white short grain rice, the glycemic index is lower. So maybe that's the direction we should go. Yeah?
I was looking at this. Why would honey have a glycemic index of 73 but only have a glycemic load of 4?
Because you are only taking like a teaspoon of honey.
Okay.
Yep. So remember on that load, that is a very, I'm glad you asked that, because I wanted to talk about that. So the glycemic load might be maybe the one that you more want to look at because it takes into account that portion size. So yeah, so honey has a very high glycemic index, but you don't use 50 grams of it. All right? You're not going to use 50 grams. And then think of this, okay? Let's see if I can do this off the cuff. If I were looking at white bread compared with honey, in my opinion, and probably those of a lot of people, white bread does not have a lot of nutritive value. All right, but honey does. If you're getting raw honey, be careful the honey you buy in the store. This is part of the whole conspiracy theory that's going on in my brain. You know, this marketing ploy. I know, I'm a conspiracist. I'm just going to say it. You may not be buying real honey if you buy it from the store. You need to make sure you're reading the labels. Does it say that there is honey in it? When you buy that little bear off the shelf in the store, make sure it says that there's honey in it. I know, you would think that that would be a no-brainer, but it's not. But if you are buying real local honey, and you can get it right around here, you can get it right up the street in Concord, right from Concord, there's a couple different things. Number one, there is nutrition value there. Number two, if you buy local, it helps with allergies. That was a really good, well-planned sneeze, thank you. But yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Also, on the table, it shows that white bread has a lower glycemic load than wheat bread. So does that mean that wheat bread raises your blood glucose more than white bread does?
And you know what? In this particular case, they are, when you get to, yes, if you're just looking at the numbers, but the one that you're looking at that is a different is a glycemic load, and that has to do with the fact that there are more carbohydrates within that wheat bread, but there is more nutrition. So the other thing, and that's why I say don't just go off of the glycemic index and load, use it as a tool though in your decision making, because we know that whole wheat bread would have more nutrition in it for that glycemic load than the white bread, okay? And so I would take all of those things into consideration. If I were going to eat bread, I would go with the whole wheat bread. Number one, because I can't, usually the white bread is full of a bunch of chemicals. I generally make my own though at home, and then I eat it, because I know it's very simple and it doesn't have a lot of chemicals to make it stay. I mean, do you wonder why bread is so nice and soft? There's chemicals in there that they use to make it that way. Because if you make it at home, it's not going to be quite as soft, and it's not going to last as long in that state. But that was a good question. Sam, did that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any other questions on that? And do you guys understand the difference? Make sure you understand the difference between the glycemic index and the glycemic load, and which one would make more sense to use. Okay? All right. So our carbohydrate digestion, in the old book it's 129. In the book I have it's 133. So this is the process of digestion of carbohydrates. I should have put the picture in there, but you have the picture in your book. So there is a process, there is a 7-step process of this, and it is very interesting. As you read through each step, the basic premise is this, that everything, your starches and your disaccharides, all get broken down into your monosaccharides, okay? Those are the basic things, your glucose, your fructose, and your galactose. So in your body, they are going to get broken down into those. If they are digested as the simple sugars, which would be most of your added sugars would be, or the disaccharides, they will break down faster, okay? So the starches need a little bit longer time, which is why you don't have that spike. So it starts out actually in the mouth. The enzyme amylase breaks down starch, and that happens as you're chewing. Okay, that is actually the first step that the carbohydrates start to get broken down. Now, when the food bolus, that's what it's called, enters into the stomach, the acid there inactivates this enzyme amylase. And so carbohydrates at that point, the starches aren't broken down further there. But then the pancreatic amylase breaks it down into maltose. So remember, now this is one of your disaccharides in the small intestine. So the starches, it starts to get broken down in the mouth. In the stomach, that kind of slows down a little bit due to the stomach acid. In the small intestine, it's then continued to be broken down. You get to maltose, which is the disaccharide. Then the small intestine, as this keeps traveling through, breaks down the disaccharides, that's sucrose, lactose, and maltose, into your monosaccharides. Okay? And then at that point, as the food keeps traveling down, those are then going to be absorbed. Okay? They get absorbed into the blood, they get taken to the liver, and then also as it keeps traveling in the large intestine, fermentation can take place of the fiber, the soluble fiber. The insoluble fiber is part of the bulk that then passes out of the body. Okay? So this is how the carbohydrates are broken down and used in the body, right? Which is one of the reasons that eating that fiber people who have a high fiber diet have a lower chance of like colon cancer because it is helping to keep that movement going and to excrete any of the waste faster. All right? So stuff just isn't sitting there to get reabsorbed. All right, but then the liver is where this is then all processed to, and that is where the extra added sugars can cause kind of a, I don't know what the word is, but a little bit of havoc on the liver, okay? It makes the liver work a little bit overtime, and issues can come from that. Our liver is very important. All right, any questions there? So that's just kind of the process of what's happening, and that can explain a little bit about why it's important to have more of the starch rather than the simple sugars. All right, so blood sugar. When we talk about homeostasis, our normal blood glucose should be sitting between 80 and 100, okay? As you get over that, then you kind of fall into what we would label pre-diabetic, so, or you have pre-diabetes. You know, those of you who had me before know I don't like to use labels on people. People who have diabetes doesn't define them, so I don't like to use the word diabetic, but they have diabetes. But you fall into that range. And so when you get to where you're consistently over the 140 mark, this puts you in the hyperglycemic area. And that is, hyper is high, glycemia is talking about the blood sugar. Yeah?
What happens if it's below 80?
So below 80, you have the hypoglycemia. And what can happen here is actually, if you know somebody who has diabetes, actually the fall into hypoglycemia is what we have to watch out for as healthcare people. If you are working with a client who has diabetes, they are starting an exercise program. Exercise helps with the blood glucose, and so it's going to mess it up. If they are taking insulin, there is a chance that that could then fall below. All right? And you will recognize this, and this is why it's important to also make sure that you know the people you're working out with, you know what issues might come up. If somebody has diabetes and it falls below, they tend to get irritable. Their personality may change a little bit. They might seem a little disoriented. Okay, they're falling into hypoglycemia. And the short-term response of that is to give them like a hard candy if they're obviously conscious. You give them hard candy to suck on so that it gets their blood sugar up. You don't want to do that a lot. That is something that you do for that moment, and then obviously you have to readjust the insulin. So they usually say when people with diabetes start a workout program to monitor, they need to just keep monitoring their blood glucose all the time to make sure that it stays within the normal range. And then to adjust, usually what can happen is you can decrease the amount of insulin that you're given, especially for those who have type 2 diabetes, which is where it isn't that there was an attack on the pancreas and the body can't produce insulin. Generally, it's just that your body has become insulin resistant. And so if you remember those pictures where or is that coming? I've looked at this so many times, that might be coming. Where the insulin helps the cells open up so that the glucose, the sugar, can get in. All right, if you become insulin resistant and it doesn't react that way, then you need to take medication to help your cells be able to do that, okay? So, in that case, a lot of people who have type 2 diabetes have been able to, once they've started an exercise program and gotten their weight in the optimal range, they're able to give up their medication. They no longer have diabetes. Yeah?
I know, like, it's also important to, like, ask them what they normally do when they have low blood sugar, because some people, like, prefer drinking juice or, like, and little like tubes of glucose
Yeah.
that I feel like at least like to have with you if you're like training someone,
Mhm.
like super easy, even if like they might be like somewhat unconscious glucose sort of like.
Yeah, so that's a good point. There, you know, at all times, if you have somebody who has diabetes that you're working out with, make sure you have some source available to do that. Either orange juice in the fridge or the little carbohydrate packets that our marathon runners use, or, you know, something there that you can help them get out of the crisis. The whole point of that is getting out of the crisis. So the insulin response, this is where maybe a reactive hypoglycemia, all right? So when that's happening, you're exercising, that's making it better, you're taking insulin, so you're gonna have a reactive hypoglycemia and you need to get out of that because that is very dangerous, okay? So you want that homeostasis. Have you ever been around somebody, and you know, the new term that I see out there a lot is hangry? That's what's going on. Okay, maybe somebody skipped breakfast and then they have classes till 2 o'clock, and you know, by the time they're halfway through their 1 o'clock class, they're just angry at everybody and just, you know, they need to eat. And so really the best option is to kind of keep that blood glucose in that homeostasis. Now, on that, there are a couple different thoughts. If I have time, I think on Friday I'll play a little thing for you, but I'm going to get a glucagon. I'm going to, if that's the right one, I think it is.